Hey everyone, this is Eddie Kalegi with Tim Moore, reminding you that SportsSpeak is now powered by SeatGeek. SeatGeek is the one-stop shop for tickets to sporting events, concerts, and so much more.
Use the promo code SportsSpeak at checkout for $20 off your first purchase.
SeatGeek, let there be live. Now, on to the show. Hey guys, what is up? Welcome back to another edition of SportsSpeak Live, episode 187. As always, powered by SeatGeek. Use the promo code SportsSpeak, all caps, one word, $20 off your first online purchase. I'm Eddie Kalegi.
And I'm Tim Moore.
Well, the NFL season is 2 weeks deep. We are back. We took a week off just to digest 2 weeks of football to make some better conclusions about some teams. Not any good conclusions we can really make about the Giants or Eagles right now. We'll be diving into that. Going to talk about the injury bug as well in the NFL. Another season where so many star players are getting hurt early, including two major QBs. Other big weapons. We're going to dive into that as well. And Tim's going to do Tim's tiers at the end. The 5 NFL teams that have impressed him the most through the first 2 weeks of the season. Baseball, by the way, we'll get into that in our next episode as we get set for the MLB postseason. NBA season's only about a month away as well, so we certainly have a lot to get to. But we got to start with the SportsSpeak Fantasy Football League because I have some frustrations I need to share because my roster is hot garbage. It's not the worst team. That belongs to Adam Tropper, but this is the exact same spot, Tim, that I was in last year, where Tropper had the worst roster. I had the second worst roster. He somehow finished third in the league. I ended up finishing last, and my team is a complete mess right now, and I'm going to be playing the Tank Bowl here week 3 against Tropper. I'm favored by 18. But let's see, because my team is so injured. Thank goodness Jordan Addison got hurt because I was able to pick up Rashid Shaheed. And was that not just that he got hurt, but he was actually ruled out because I am stuck with multiple Bears receivers who are hurt. I'm still stuck with Chuba Hubbard and Raheem Blackshear. I still have Raheem Blackshear on my team because they're keeping him on the active roster as a kick returner. And I can't get any points from that. I'm stuck with him on my team because he's a kick returner. So that's a complete mess. Garrett Wilson has underperformed. Rachaad White has underperformed. Zeke is my number 2 running back. This team's a mess. The only team I'm better than is Tropper because he has 3 defenses and 6 Green Bay Packers.
Let's just say 6 Green Bay Packer receivers. Actually, I'm sorry, 5 in Jordan Love, right?
Yes.
So, yeah, I mean, I don't know. On my end, I feel that I'm a little nervous because I look at my team. I feel like it's solid. It's in a great spot. But man, last year, right? Drew, T-Glass, they had the same record. T-Glass had the head-to-head advantage in division games. And T-Glass, of course, wins the championship. Drew had the biggest winning streak of anybody, 10 games. This year, I'll tell you what, Riley drafted a very, very solid team for Tristan. I mean, there was no chance going into the week last week. I had a chance to beat that team. And I mean, I just watched dominance. I mean, left and right in his roster. And again, it's the role of a gimmick draft. You don't know what to expect. But I'll say it like this. I mean, I would say flat out, the best 2 teams have to be right now. I would say T-Glasses as well as Tristan's. But I play Hoffman this week. Hoffman's team looks very good as well. And Brett Hahn's team looks very good as well. But the reason why I keep on saying this, right? Here's my problem. These guys all play my division. So, and this is the problem with the SportsSpeak schedule for fantasy, even with us randomizing everything. You play your division games early. So you only get one shot in your division. So if you lose your division, if it comes to a tiebreaker, you don't get head-to-head over certain people. I only got very lucky last year that Tristan had a monumental collapse at the end of the season just for me to even get not just a bye, but win my division to put myself in a spot. So needless to say, it's going to be very interesting moving forward. But I really don't know what to do. Last week I benched Chris Olave. It was a good decision, but now I've got to play him. And I don't really know what to do. And another thing, too, you mentioned underwhelming running backs, not to preview NFL, but I really feel like outside of course, the injury bug, that's really been the tone around the league for a lot of the league's top running backs to this point, because there's a lot of guys that have underperformed, and there's a lot of mid-tier guys that have performed beyond expectations. Really, to be honest with you, what it made the first 2 weeks ultimately unpredictable, not just in fantasy, but in NFL terms.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that in a second. Personally, for me too, like it's just so difficult with this roster to figure out what I'm going to do. I'm very fortunate though that my one out of division game in the first half of the season is against Tropper. So, my team has a chance for a mental reset. If I lose this week, I will be very upset. But just our standings for those who want to follow along. We have four unbeatens right now: Hoffman, Tristan, T Glass, and Bellows. The 1-1 squads are Raheel, Brett, Tim, Alec, Miniker, and Vinny. 0-2, you got Drew, me, Tropper, and Zoe, who got screwed. Should have a win if she wasn't in Denmark because she missed out on Christian McCaffrey getting ruled out.
And I'm going to say this on Drew's end. Drew, remember last year, started 0-2 and went on the 10-game win streak. I don't think that's going to happen this season because he will tell you he has one of the worst rosters in the league. But at the end of the day, we're all playing to not finish last. It's either you're playing for the championship or you're playing to not finish last.
That's
16
me.
make the playoffs. That's it. And I don't know where I sit right now. I feel like I have the seventh or eighth best team. But as injuries continue to progress, I could have one of the best teams for all I know. So you got to play it week by week. That's what the NFL is. But in this league, you're playing until you get a bye so you can improve your roster. And unfortunately, the position that also I want to add on is killing me the most is tight end. Because Evan Ingram gets hurt during warmups. I have to rush and I put in Hurst and he gets one catch for 5 yards. And now I don't know if he's coming back this week. He's projected points. So I cut Hurst, but the Jaguars don't play until Monday night. So I may be stuck getting an emergency tight end based on one of the two Monday night games.
Yeah. But it's funny that you brought up the tight ends because I think this is where we transition into the NFL because you mentioned running backs underperforming. Besides like Brock Bowers, Isaiah Likely, the tight ends have sucked to start the year. Tight ends are not playing very well. And my conclusion from the first 2 weeks of the season, it's been weird because it almost feels like old school football because the big power backs are the only ones that are actually having success in the backfield, like Tony Pollard and Saquon. Obviously, I will touch on Saquon in a little bit, but in terms of running the football, those are the guys who are succeeding. And the quarterbacks are not putting up flashy numbers. So many QBs that are good and are even being considered having good games are under 200 yards passing in a game. Like, we're not seeing those big numbers. We saw offensive struggles early in the year in the NFL 2 years ago, but we're seeing that same pattern, but just not these big numbers. And it's kind of reminding me of how the NFL was maybe 15, 20 years ago before there was that stretch of all of these premier passers besides Brady and Manning, like, 2010, 2012, when you had Stafford and Rodgers and Luck and Alex Smith and Matt Ryan and Drew Brees and Phillip Rivers and Ben Roethlisberger, all throwing for so many yards. We're not seeing that right now. And we've also seen a lot of upsets first couple of weeks of the year that, again, we're 2 weeks in. What I've come to learn now that we're in the fifth year of doing this show, I don't want to read too much into this. The Bengals start badly to start every season. I think they'll be fine. San Francisco is banged up right now. They will certainly be fine. Ravens are 0-2, could even get to 0-3. I think they're going to bounce back and have a big winning streak at some point this season. So I don't read too much into that. The thing I want to talk about, Tim, is the injuries because the NFL is having big issues right now with players getting hurt and not being able to play, and so many stars that are out 2 weeks into the season. We are through 2 weeks and already injured. Here's the list: Jordan Love, Tua Tagovailoa, Justin Herbert's banged up. Running backs, Isaiah Pacheco is now down. Rashad White is banged up. Receivers, Keenan Allen, Cooper Kupp, Puka Nacua, A.J. Brown, Deebo Samuel, Justin Jefferson. I mean, the list goes on. And not only is it just frustrating for fantasy owners, it's frustrating for people who watch the sport too, to see so many guys getting hurt. I don't know how you fix this because obviously things have evolved from the days when the 70s when guys would have like all these broken bones and try to play through them, and that's not healthy for your long-term health. But is there anything that the league can do here? I mean, we're 2 weeks in
Well,
and
hold
so
on.
many names are hurt.
there is something the league is doing, and it's becoming a big talk of controversy, to be honest with you, in this past week, is all these insurance clauses put into players' contracts. I mean, I don't know if you know about this. It's been happening in a couple of years, but now here in 2024, it's been made bigger than ever, where there's teams buying into these players' insurance clauses where if they get hurt and they're out a designated amount of time in a season, they get a certain amount of cap money back for the following year so that they can go and invest that. So to me, for example, let's say Tua never comes back and plays football. He just signed this massive extension, right? The math says that overall, the Miami Dolphins can get $49 million in cap space back over the next few seasons where they can invest into other players if Tua misses an extended amount of time. So I don't know how you prevent players getting injured because that's an aspect of the sport. But I feel that this is a very important topic and discussion because at the end of the day, sports should be about making educated decisions when you're building rosters. And I'm sorry, I understand the Deshaun Watson contract and quarterbacks are very expensive, and that the Cleveland Browns made a very uneducated, forceful decision based on the fact that at the time they felt they could be a Super Bowl contender and rushed into something that has been an utter disaster. But no team should be protected just because of a rare chance of an NFL player, in my opinion, getting hurt. You made the contract, that's the risk you play. And the only way you can fix that is by having players play cheaper if they really want to play. So to me, even though the NFL works on cap limits, and I understand players want to make a lot of money, there's gains and there's losses to things. And they're almost, in my opinion, like somebody that's an independent contractor. That's the best way of putting it. And you play at your own risk. Taxes and saying that's its own discussion, but you shouldn't be able to turn around and put insurance on a player if they get hurt to get money back. That could be exploited so badly. Well, what if the Giants wanted to turn around and say, we're done with Daniel Jones, we're just going to inactivate you the whole season with no true injury clause, and they deem, oh, it's a fake injury. There's teams that will find a way to manipulate this because it's about getting ahead of your advantage, which is why I don't like it. They've got to give it away. And again, it's the risk you play in 2024.
So let's talk about our two teams who are both coming off of disastrous week twos. I'm going to start with your Super Bowl pick that I don't think is going there. And I think this proved why once again. The Philadelphia Eagles, who are not improved at all from last year's team that completely collapsed. And I will preface it with this. I have been criticized by many people before for being a Nick Sirianni stan at times, that despite his crazy attitude and his poor decisions, I stand by him because I think he's a good coach. And that's how I felt until this game against the Atlanta Falcons. First of all, Eagles are cursed on Monday Night Football these last couple of years. The Commanders game with the Quez fumble, the Seahawks game last year. Of course, it was Monday Night Football in the playoffs last year when they got eliminated by the Bucs, and now this game, which might be the worst one of all. So many bad moments, and so much of this can be blamed on Nick Sirianni first. I mean, in the first quarter, take the damn points. You have one of the top 5 kickers in the league. Stop trying to reinvent the game. This is why the Eagles have not won a Super Bowl. This is why Dan Campbell is, Dan Campbell with the Lions. I mean, stop reinventing the game. Take the points. It's the first quarter. Kick the field goal. Take the points. And you know what? If you were in that situation and had those extra 3 points, this collapse wouldn't have happened. Then you get to the situation at hand, and it's a late game situation where it is third down and you're trying to convert this. And instead of running the ball, continuing to run the clock, and potentially killing the game with Saquon, who has been ice cold, but he has been cooking on the ground, you decide to throw the football for no particular reason to Barkley, who is not a good pass catcher. And this is not me, again, You can fact check me and go back through other episodes. I am not just hating on Saquon because of this run drop. I didn't like the move to begin with. I don't know why you didn't keep DeAndre Swift. DeAndre Swift was a net positive for this team who gave them exactly what they needed in the backfield. When you have a quarterback who can squat 500 pounds, you do not need a running back like Saquon Barkley on your roster. And what are the problems with Barkley? He can't stay healthy, which I think will rear its ugly head later in the year, and he can't catch. And he can't make big plays late in games. He does not have that clutch gene. He never has. And what happens? He drops an easy ball, but that situation shouldn't have even played out because they should have just run the football. And then what happens? The secondary gets cooked. The secondary is awful. It's awful. Darius Slay is washed. CJ has that one big stop on fourth down, but back-to-back weeks, he's gotten dropped. He's gotten dropped by mid-receivers. Darnell Mooney, Jaden Reed. I mean, make a tackle. My goodness. Reed Blankenship looked lost out there. He struggled. The defensive line could not get any pressure on Kirk Cousins, who can't move, is old, and is coming off of a season-ending Achilles injury, and they can't get any hits on him. And Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis are non-existent. Brandon Graham is still out there and should probably be in a senior home, unfortunately, even though I like him. And then the offensive line. I mean, two awful O-linemen along with three great ones. Cam Jurgens, 40 seconds into the game, gets an ineligible man downfield penalty on a play that was nowhere near him, and Mekhi Becton sucks too. So this team has many, many problems. It all stems from Nick Sirianni. It all came together at the end of the game. I hate prevent defense, by the way. My dad said it best. He said, prevent defense prevents defense. There is no reason to be playing like that. It's the same strategy that failed against the Seahawks last year. It was just mid-range passes, dunking it down the field, getting out of bounds because there's no pressure there from the corners. They can easily get out of bounds and stop the clock. And guess what? Atlanta wins this game. Complete disaster. Eagles might give up 60 to the Saints because the Saints have scored like 90 points in the first two games, and the secondary is Swiss cheese. And it all stems from Sirianni. And I apologize. I should not have defended this guy because he made so many boneheaded decisions that cost the Eagles this football game.
I put it like this: just run the damn ball. It's as simple as that. And the thing is listen, I've been critical of Nick Sirianni, especially last season, but even in post-game press conferences, it never came across his head once. And this is the problem with NFL coaching. You mentioned Dan Campbell, Eddie, right? It's ridiculous that coaches today are trained that you have to go for the kill shot. And Tom Brady said it best too. NFL coaches are dumbing down the game because we're trying to get players into these scenarios where they need to perform right away, not develop, not get better, but we need to do in the moments what we can to win a championship, because the NFL isn't about building long term. It's about what can you currently do. And granted, that's a culture shift and change from a very long time ago. But if there was any coach from 10 years ago would have taken the points early on in that game, any coach would have ran the ball there. And you mentioned you could have had a 9-point lead. At the end of the day, woulda, coulda, shoulda. That's not the point. But you're up 6 still. And that's the other thing, too. You mentioned prevent defense, Eddie, right? At the end of the day, I know Sirianni's not making defensive calls, but you're up a touchdown. That's it. Touchdown, extra point, you lose the game. I understand keeping teams in bounds, letting them get to the 50, and so on. But you're up a possession. You need to create pressure. You can't play loosely. And the problem is with the Eagles, and the problem is, to be honest with you, with other teams around the NFL that have very confusing defenses, it's not knowing when to turn on that switch and turn off the switch. If the Eagles had a 2-possession, 3-possession lead, I'd understand it, right? You're just trying to milk clock, get done with the game. But you've got to play 100% all the time until that game is decided thoroughly. And for the Philadelphia Eagles, at no point, even when they chose to not hand the ball off to Saquon and pass to him, the game was never decided. And also, another thing too, Eddie, you hand the ball off to Saquon, right? Let's say he doesn't turn around and get the first down. It's close more often than not. What does that mean? Who says you can't push? Yeah, you're still up three, but it's a play you've dominated with and have had success with. So I don't understand the thinking. And again, critical thinking wins you games. Critical thinking lost Nick Sirianni this game. Just as we'll talk about the Giants in a moment, critical thinking lost Brian Dable the game on Sunday. So it's unfortunate what we're seeing, but again, it's a factor. And again, I agree with Tom Brady on this. It's a factor of we're dumbing the game down and we're not understanding player development because we're going week to week with expectations of you got to perform now and you got to go currently because your job's on the line every single week, every single game. Otherwise, guess what? If you don't win immediately, you don't build culture and you lose the locker room.
Yeah,
So
and honestly, for me, as an Eagle fan, the only two players I'm happy, well, no problem with Jake Elliott, Devontae Smith, Lane Johnson. Nobody else impressed in that game. They need to bounce back against the Saints, which is going to be difficult because the Saints have owned the Eagles. They beat them 2 years ago when the Eagles made it to the Super Bowl. They've eliminated the Eagles from the playoffs 3 times in the last 18 years. So, not feeling good about that one at all. But at least the Eagles do have a win this year, which is something the Giants do not have, Tim. And what the Giants also didn't have for pretty much that entire game, and the reason they lost was a kicker because Graham Gano got hurt. But what I do not understand is how you do not have an emergency kicker on the 53-man roster. You have, see the Rutgers logo behind me, Jude McAtamney. I do not understand how Jude McAtamney is even rostered in the NFL because he wasn't even kicking field goals and extra points last year. He got benched by Greg Schiano from doing that, but he was on a roster. How do you not carry a second kicker? You should have something in place as an emergency, and you didn't. And that cost the Giants the game because they scored 3 touchdowns. They were even with the Commanders because the Commanders could only get field goals. The Giants defense actually clutched up in multiple situations despite having a lot of problems. I mean, the Giants roster is terrible, in my opinion. To me, besides the Panthers, they might have the worst roster in football, but they found a way. But because you didn't have someone who could kick extra points, you're down 3, and the Commanders were able to win the game on Austin Seibert's 7th field goal.
yeah, well, I'll put it like this. I'll give Brian Dable a little bit of slack in regards to the fact that he believed, based on what they saw throughout practice and warm-ups, Graham Gano, his groin, keyword his groin, was healthy enough to come out and kick. But as we saw last year, when Graham Gano last got hurt and missed out the rest of the season, he on kickoffs overcompensates if he's got to make a big play and hurts himself even more. So what was a hurt groin turned into a hurt hamstring. And again, I can understand it, but Brian, you got to listen. Think about it. He's been on the injury report all week long. It's a valuable position in the NFL. Is it going to hurt us to not elevate an extra, I don't know, running back, halfback? I don't even know who's elevated in that game for the record, if there even was any elevations. I understand we struggle in the corner position, but is it going to really hurt you knowing that these guys are often not going to play and that you're dealing with the injury bug and you may have to put somebody in a position to play because your punter, who might I remind you, does not play American style football, only knows how to punt. He's never kicked field goals in his life. He had to come in an emergency situation last year. And yeah, why did the Giants turn the decision? Because they watched him shank an extra point 20 yards wide right on an extra point. That's a problem. Critical thinking costs, or lack of critical thinking cost the New York Giants, not in the middle of the game, not late in the game, but before the game even started. And it's frustrating because, again, and this is where I'm going to start getting very mad about the defense. I'm already questioning by what week is Shane Bowman going to be fired. People will argue I had a troll pretty much of Wink Martindale, who I think is a Wink Martindale burner account, pretty much arguing with me on Twitter, saying that Wink had top 5 third down percentage in 2022, which is, yeah, that's great. But the Giants were abysmal in third and beyond. Like, I'm talking about 3rd and 9 and longer. It felt like the last 2 seasons with Wink sending a blitz. Shane Bowen, I understand our corners are abysmal, but why is it that we're playing loose coverage on every single receiver? I mean, Deontay Banks, I felt he had a solid rookie campaign. He is literally every single down, 10 to 15 yards. And I'm not exaggerating this. You go back and watch the game, you look at it. Every single down, 10 to 15 yards off of Terry McLaurin. And there's DBs playing behind him, not up in front of him, with other receivers. The Giants got picked apart from literally bubble screen plays and checkdowns the entire game. What they turned around and they started involving a run game downhill, that being with Brian Robinson or Jaden Daniels, the Giants were lost. Breaking news, week one, every time Dexter Lawrence got taken out of the football game, they had the ball ran down their throats by Aaron Jones and the Minnesota Vikings. So my problem with Shane Bowen is it's very clear he's as bad as the defensive coordinator Shane Betcher because he can't plan with personnel. Now, don't get me wrong, the Giants did him no favors really making any investments into that secondary, and they went out and they could only afford Brian Burns. Xavier McKinney is doing flying things in Green Bay, which, by the way, I'm very happy to see. I'm very happy for him. But when it's all said and done, if you can't get off the field in third down because you're constantly getting hold, Jason Pinnock, I'm looking at you, and your secondary is getting absolutely torched left and right and getting trucked by Zach Ertz, who's about to be in the retirement home the next 2 years. It is ridiculous. It is devastating. And I'm sorry, there is no reason in hell a football team should have 7 offensive possessions in an entire NFL game in 2024, 5 of which were promising, 3 of which were scoring drives. The other one was a drop by Malik Neighbors in the red zone. And the other one was a Devin Singletary fumble to open up the second half where the Giants zoomed across midfield and were looking promising. There is no reason 7 field goals should beat you, but yet that was. And why I could be critical of Brian Dable for not kicking the field goal, I understand why the Giants went for it on fourth. The Giants executed the play on fourth down. Unfortunately, Malik Neighbors made one mistake, and I will not be critical of him because he's a rookie at the end of the day, and you will make mistakes. He dropped the biggest play of the game, and I can live with that at the end of the day. But it is ridiculous that this defense is as bad as it is. You brought back Adoree Jackson. He was non-existent even that game. I don't understand what this defense is doing. And unfortunately, Eddie, I'm going to say it like this. The Giants are in 2 scenarios. Yeah, they've looked like they played the preseason the last 2 weeks, right? Could it get better from here? I would like to hope so. But the problem is, if the Giants keep on losing and don't get better from here, listen, I think Brian Dable is a very good coach. I want him to be the future of this New York Giants team. I like Joe Shane, even though not every draft pick, let's be honest, has worked out. Kayvon Thibodeau has been non-existent the last 2 weeks. Evan Neal can't even get on the football field. And quite frankly, I don't even want him near my football team, just like Eric Flowers years back. But when it's all said and done, they at least are starting to build a culture in a direction that I can kind of make sense of the moves they are making. But if they don't perform, they win 2, 3 games this year, and they thinking they're picking the top 5. Guess what? It'll be Bill Belichick being the coach of the New York Giants. And I don't want Bill Belichick to control my offense. He'll be the one drafting a new quarterback. I think Bill is the greatest coach of all time, but I don't know how to feel about that. And on top of it, you won't have Joe Shane as the Giants general manager. It'll be Bill Belichick because he wants to control the organization from top to bottom, which, in all respect to him, he deserves that for his success. But we will not have Brian Dable another year if the Giants season turns incredibly south and plays horrible. So I'm hoping they can turn it around. They're not going to do good against the Cleveland Browns defense, but I want them to prove me wrong when it's all said and done. And I really genuinely don't think Daniel Jones is the full problem to this team. He is a problem. It is the defense. And moving forward, looking towards the draft, which I'm already talking about 2 weeks in, which you know me is ridiculous even talking about. But I do not believe the replacement for Daniel Jones is going to be available in this draft. I'd rather see the Giants draft Travis Hunter if they are picking that early and available and tanking for 2 or 3 more years until they get Archie Manning to play quarterback because it is ridiculous. I'm sorry. The Giants they're stuck in a scenario where Brian Dable's success early, and it was my favorite season of all time of being a Giants fan, killed the future of the New York Giants and how we perceive these last two seasons.
Okay, I agree with about 90% of that. Couple things. There's no way Bill Belichick's going to want to walk into that situation. If he's going to go back and coach, I know the sentiment with New York in the area and everything. I don't see him wanting to walk into that train wreck, number one. Number two,
He
a
wanted
lot of,
Atlanta. I just want to remind you that.
yeah, I know. I don't know if any team would want him. I don't know if the Giants would want him, and I don't know if Bill Belichick would want to go to the Giants. So that's number one. Number two, again, a lot of the other problems here stem from the Giants paying a guy $40 million because apparently the market says you got to pay a quarterback $40 million a year when the quarterback sucks. He sucks. He was never good. He got carried by Saquon and the defense, and they somehow had devil magic those first 9 games of that season to go 7-2 and beat Lamar and Aaron Rodgers. So I feel like the pivot from the quarterback position needs to happen soon. And like you were telling me on Tuesday, you're in trouble because Russell Wilson might be the best free agent quarterback. So you might have to go to the draft. I'm not saying you go and get Shador, but there's other options out there.
Yeah, but again, I don't like Shador Sanders. That's the problem. I don't feel he's mature enough to play in the NFL. And listen, I think he's very talented, but the decision making isn't there. The reason why I could justify Daniel Jones being the quarterback of the New York Giants, and I stand by it in 2024, is this. Daniel Jones makes good decisions. I know one preseason game of a pick six doesn't look like that. Daniel Jones makes good decisions. Daniel Jones's execution on his decisions, that's a different story. And again, I'm not justifying him.
You're still here.
Sorry, there we go. I'm not justifying him playing quarterback for the long term, but until they get a better option, I don't know how many more seasons I can stand at Daniel Jones, but I don't want to force a situation of getting a risky quarterback to come replace him, knowing that we're going to have to stink for the next 5 or 6 more years until we hopefully get the right quarterback. So that's the thing about it for me.
All right. Well, we'll leave it at that on the Giants. We're 2 weeks in, still a lot of time to go, but Giants definitely are in trouble. Eagles are not looking too good either. Let's finish with this. Tim's tiers. The 5 teams that have impressed him the most. For me, the Chiefs have been great to start the year. You beat Baltimore and Cincinnati first 2 weeks. You can't deny that. Obviously, New Orleans has shocked everybody as Derek Carr scored on his first 15 drives this year. The Bucs have been more impressive than I thought. They go into Ford Field. They beat Detroit. Cleveland, despite having Massage Man as their quarterback, have shown some life. I've been impressed with Green Bay, obviously. They do get the win over the Colts even without Jordan Love. Buffalo's been much better than I expected as well. But Tim, the floor is yours. Your top 5 in Tim's tiers of teams that have impressed you the most through 2 weeks of this NFL season.
All right, well, I'm going to start it off with number 5. I'm going to go with the Chargers. It's not surprising, right? You get a good head coach and you manage the games properly, they win. But I don't think without receivers, anybody thought the Chargers were going to be 2-0 to open up the year. Justin Herbert even really hasn't been throwing a lot of great numbers, but he's been that presence that has led that offense and has done a great job handing off the football. J.K. Dobbins, until maybe he gets hurt, has looked great. But the Chargers overall looking solid to start off the year. Number 4, it's no surprise, it's the Pittsburgh Steelers. Without Russell Wilson, who I think will elevate that offense when he comes back, Justin Fields has done enough to lead this team to a 2-0 start, and their defense is spectacular. Spectacular. I am so thoroughly impressed on what we've seen from Pittsburgh, and I'm going to be honest with you, Eddie. We talk about the struggles with the Bengals and the Ravens. This is such a hard decision, even though those are 2 good football teams, that this is such a hard division that I can see this team winning the AFC North with just the hot start alone that they have had. And number 3, mentioned hot starts, the New Orleans Saints. Nobody saw the absolute domination of what we expected last week going into that game in Dallas. And New Orleans, 2 excellent weeks of football, of excellent offense. They have dominated opponents left and right. Perhaps Derek Carr has one last very good MVP caliber season in him because he has done nothing but torch defenses the last 2 weeks, and that has been very, very impressive. Number 2, I'm going to the Buffalo Bills. Josh Allen, let's be honest, doesn't have a great receiver, but he has done enough developing this offseason where it has been very impressive that he's put himself in a position to not just win games, but also do a good job of making great decisions and not forcing the football. If this is what the Buffalo Bills do moving forward, especially with Skylar Thompson or whoever else is going to start for Miami down the road, the Bills all of a sudden potentially become the favorite in AFC East along with the Jets. I'm eager to see what that is moving forward. And Eddie, to finish it off, I feel that this one is no surprise to anybody. It's got to be the Minnesota Vikings. I was not bought on Sam Darnold exactly being quarterback. I know they have the biggest receiving threats in the league, and they didn't have Jordan Addison last week, but he's potentially coming back soon. This secondary is probably the most underrated secondary in the NFL. And to beat the San Francisco 49ers like they did last week, the Minnesota Vikings are prepared. They are the real deal. And I genuinely do think the Packers are going to have their money's worth battling for the NFC North with the Minnesota Vikings this year. I'm very, very, very interested to see if they don't collapse in the second half of the season like last year, because this team looks good.
Yeah, and I'll finish with this. Sam Darnold in his career has looked like a competent quarterback when he's in good situations, and he's proving it yet again in Minnesota. Although that Vikings team has had some injuries, a lot of other things that haven't gone their way, that roster looks pretty good. If Justin Jefferson can stay healthy, they do have TJ Hawkinson coming back eventually as well. So there's a lot to be excited about if you are in Skull Nation. We'll be back next week. We'll be looking more NFL. We'll be previewing the MLB postseason as well, which starts in less than 2 weeks. So you'll want to stay tuned for that. As always, use our promo code on SeatGeek SportsSpeak, all caps, one word. Follow us on the socials at SportsSpeak Live. But I'm Eddie Kalegi.
And I'm Tim Moore.
Signing off of SportsSpeak Live, episode 187. Enjoy week 3 of the NFL season.